JLD, it's awesome to have you on the Tech Explorations podcast. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I'm fired up to be here. Thanks for having me, brother.
I've been listening to your podcast for a few years now. It's just a little surreal to have you as my guest in my podcast, but I'm very excited at the same time. So I've got a bunch of questions for you. Just a little introduction, because our podcast is really about technology and makers. So my guests are people, we call them makers. These are people that are super curious about technology and they like to use technology to make things, solve problems, and of course have a little bit of fun on the side. You're not exactly a maker as far as I know, you are a podcaster. But what really fascinates me about you is your life story and how you were able to change your life around. Because you're not just a podcaster, you are somebody who has influenced a lot of people, and you've gone through this amazing learning path to transform your life. So this is what I want to talk about, just to take from your experience of how you used self-education and learning to achieve your state of life at the moment. So could you take 10 or 15 seconds to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
15 seconds. All right. I gotta be quick.
Make it quick.
So Lee Dumas, I'm the founder of a daily podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, where I interview successful entrepreneurs about their life story. And I did that daily show for 2,000 days in a row, 5.5 years. Then I shifted to a 3-day per week show. So I got a little more breathing room now, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And now I got 2,200 episodes under my belt, over 1 million listens per month. And my business, Entrepreneurs on Fire, is a multi-million-dollar per year business.
That is amazing. First of all, you made it in 15 seconds or approximately that, which normally my introductory part of my podcast lasts 15 minutes. So the amazing thing, as I said, was that you reached a certain stage in your life, which is something that I have experienced as well. I used to be a university lecturer, and I realized that I can't go anymore in that way. I need to do something else with my life. And I became an online instructor. That's how I started Tech Explorations. Now, in your case, the event that the aha moment, as you call it, was quite similar, but you had some other circumstances in place. Could you take a few seconds, I guess, to describe that aha moment? Because I think this is where I want to base the rest of my questions on and see how things evolved after that moment.
Yeah, so my aha moment, which actually was my inspiration for later on when I had a podcast and used that question in every single podcast of what is your aha moment? Because I was always fascinated around that light bulb idea. You know, for me, it was 2012, and I was a person that was just searching for an answer, searching for the next step, because I had had a great 10 years post-college in the Army, corporate finance, commercial real estate, et cetera, but I hadn't found my thing. So I started self-educating myself with books and audiobooks and podcasts. And then one day I said to myself, I can't wait to go find that daily podcast that interviews an entrepreneur every day, because that's what I want to listen to as I drive to work, as I'm at the gym, as I'm walking my dog. So Peter, I went to find that podcast. It didn't exist. I was shocked. And then I said, oh, light bulb, that's an opportunity. This is a niche that has to be filled. This is a void in the marketplace, because if I want this, other people must as well. And if it doesn't exist, why can't I create that? So that was why, when I decided to create the first and only daily podcast interviewing successful entrepreneurs.
And the rest is history, as they say. But I guess, actually, this is very similar to my aha moment. Like, my background is in electronics, but I spent a lot of time in the university teaching information systems, which means that all of my knowledge of electronics pretty much disappeared. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So I woke up one day and I thought, this is a pretty interesting piece of technology. It's called the Arduino. I don't remember anything, so I have to learn. So I went out and looked for video courses on the Arduino, and I didn't find any. Light bulb moment. So I had to learn the stuff and create a whole new course. So a very similar kind of experience there. But now I guess you've made your decision. You want to become a podcaster. You want to create your daily podcast. You found the problem and you wanted to solve it. How were you from the perspective of, I know how to do this? You know, there's a lot of issues going into creating a podcast. There's the technical issues, of course, equipment to use, applications, hosting. There's a lot of business issues as well. So it's not as simple as it seems from somebody who receives a podcast, right? What was your state of mind there? Did you realize what you were getting into from the, I know how to do this perspective?
So I did not know anything about creating and launching a podcast. So what I did was something that really set the stage for the rest of my entrepreneurial journey to this date is I searched out people who are currently where I wanted to be. I wanted to be a successful business podcast host. So I went and found successful business podcast hosts. I reached out to them and I asked them to mentor me one-on-one because I knew that they had made a lot of mistakes and they could pass along how to avoid those mistakes on their journey. I knew that they had made a lot of successful steps and they could guide me down that successful path for the very same reason. And this is, going back to, I hear today, so many times people saying today, like, oh, if only I could have like Richard Branson as my mentor, like all would be well. Well, do you want to run an airline or a music store? Like, if the answer is no, then he wouldn't be a great mentor. Like if I somehow got Richard Branson to be my mentor for a podcast, as wanting to become a podcast host, it would have been a disaster because he wouldn't know the first thing about it. So you've got to find that person who is currently where you want to be. So I hired Jamie Master. She was a great podcast host of The Eventual Millionaire and still is to this day. And I found her. I invested in myself to hire her as my mentor. And for 3 months, she guided me, around all of the potential potholes and through the success swamp, and out the other side. And that was a huge reason that I started off with a bang.
So you actually reached out for an expert, and that person was who guided you, at least in the beginning, right? Because I think you moved on from that. I was looking at your timeline. You've got a very convenient timeline on your website. And you moved on from there. But the first few months were extremely important as you were getting both feet into this totally new part of your life, right? Could you describe what those first few months were like? Were things happening easily? Were you able to find a guest, ask them to join you in your podcast, have an amazing conversation with them and put it up in the air for people to download? What were the struggles like in the beginning?
The first few months were an absolute grind. Every single day it was getting up and just grinding, like learning how to create a podcast, learning how to create an interview flow, learning the technical aspects, learning how to edit, learning how to do all of the things, learning how to find guests. Everything was learning, because I knew nothing. Of course, I had my mentor to rely upon to help guide me, but she wasn't there every second of every day. So it was so much learning, so much newness, so much outside of my comfort zone. And that was a huge struggle. But, that's why I kept going back to education. I found a couple, very basic courses on podcasting that I invested in. I found, some blog posts that were written. I found some people who were doing it. I actually invested again in myself with Cliff Ravenscraft, who was the podcast answer man, and was able to be part of his podcast mastermind. So every week I was meeting with other successful podcasters. And that was a huge benefit because these podcasters, a lot of them were at a similar place in their journey as I was, which was just starting and getting going and learning. We could commiserate and share our struggles and our obstacles and our challenges, as well as our successes. So those were some really important steps. But, to sum it up in one word, every day, grind.
Sounds familiar. But it's interesting. My next question was going to be about how did you know that this was working and that you should stick with it? Like the beginning is hard, but it's going to get better. It's going to get easier. It's going to be more rewarding. And I guess you did say about those people that you were hanging out with, they were in a way your support network, right? Very important at the beginning. Is this how you got through the initial grind? Was it the support network and your mentor? Or did you see something else, perhaps, more listeners, more downloads, all that kept you coming back and improving?
You need to have a long-term vision from day one. If you're looking for immediate satisfaction, immediate gratification with numbers, with downloads, with money, with visit, whatever it might be, you're not going to get it. This is a slow grind, a slow growth. This is just day after day getting 1% better, not getting 10% better, getting 1% better. So you need to be 100% on board with delayed gratification. You need to delay your gratification. So my mindset was like, I'm going to do this nose to the grindstone for a year. I'm not going to care about my numbers. I'm not going to really even, of course I looked at my numbers, but I'm not going to put weight on that. I'm going to grind this out for a year. Then I'm going to step back. I'm going to say, okay, let's look at the past year. What's been going on? And that's what I did. So I kept my nose to the grindstone, had a long-term thought process, look for delayed gratification. And I'm lucky that I did, because the first 12 months I made $27,000. But on the 13th month alone, I did $110,000. So I'm pretty glad I didn't quit after month 6 or 9 or 11.
So keep your eye on the ball. It's really a marathon that you're running. Did you see Entrepreneur on Fire as a project, and you were like the project leader in a way? Every day was a new problem that you have to deal with, but always part of that project. So the reason I'm asking this is that I'm a big believer in project-based education. So we don't just learn things randomly and absorb things from the environment or from a book. The why has to be there. The why is very important, and completing a project gives a lot of people, me in particular, that why. What was the why for you? Was it the project? Was lifestyle? What was it?
The why for me was financial and location freedom. That's what I wanted. I wanted to have financial freedom. I wanted to have lifestyle freedom, which to me was also location freedom. That was the business I was looking to build. On top of that, that was combined with my desire to create value in the world, because I was kind of a little bummed out that from 22 to 32, I just, been chasing success and not really achieving success. And it kind of goes back to an Albert Einstein quote that I love, which is try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. And I was like, man, I am not a person of value in this world. And to me, a daily podcast that was free, valuable, and consistent, that was adding value to the world in some way, shape, or form. Even though I wasn't great at it when I started, even though, I had obstacles and challenges to overcome, it was the only daily podcast out there. And so it was a lifeline for a lot of people. And plus, because I was putting in the reps, because I was grinding it out, I was getting better every single day. And all of those things kind of combined to, where I've been able to get to 7 years later.
Yeah. So the why is extremely important. Like the project grounds your learning, but the why is what gets you through that grind in the beginning. Well, okay. We've got 1 minute, JLP. So time is almost up. Now, I'd like to ask you about, still in the context of learning and education, a piece of advice or food for thought for our listeners.
I want to go back to that Albert Einstein quote, because I feel like the theme that we've been talking about today will be really tightly wrapped up. People can really understand that if you're chasing success, you're going to have struggles in that. But if you instead make a mindset shift and try to become a person of value and really look in the mirror and be honest with yourself and saying, hey, what am I doing that's of value to somebody's life today? That's adding value to somebody's life. That's when you're on the right path. When you can honestly, at the end of the day, say, I'm really adding value to people's lives. And it's not going to be this immediate return. Again, 12 months, $27,000. 13th month, $110,000. So that has to be your mindset if you are going to have this desire for that lifestyle, that location, that financial freedom.
Awesome. Well, value just leads to success. It can lead to the independence that you set and achieve your goals. So JLD, it's been a pleasure having you on the Tech Explosions podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great day, Peter.
Thank you.